Thank you very much. First, I want to thank my partner in this escapade. But one has to be careful with the word partner today. Recently, there was a couple in the news about a month ago, and they translated the Hebrew ben zug into partner. But I want you to know my partner also happens to be my wife, and she's also the mother of my 5 children. And I thank her for doing all the dirty work of the technical matter change. She has other milas too. There's a famous statement that Rabbi Akiva made in Sochem Kufyut Bet Amanal, a metaphor that some of you may know. Yoter mima sheha'egel rotzeh linod, hara rotzeh lahnig. In other words, sometimes the cow wants to nurse the calves even more than the calf wants to be nursed. The metaphor, of course, refers to teachers and students. And since I was overwhelmed the first night of Professor Simon's lecture that all these students found use to the dictionary, so my enthusiasm to teach a little bit overcame me, and I'm here. Okay. In the time that we have, which is obviously limited, I hope I can do something meaningful. She's very good. Basically, since you people, some of you people recognize the dictionary, I thought maybe I'd try to introduce you to the next step. By that I mean the following. The idea that it is important to know every word that you're using that you see when you read a text in a foreign language has apparently sunk in with many of you. I also think it is important to know some grammar. Not to be an expert, and I admit that people manage to muddle through. You get to muddle through? We also emphasize that I think it's wise to know that intelligence is not I didn't realize you would be the star of the show. I hope you get the point. The point is that one can muddle through osmosis, get an idea of what's going on in the world. And the truth is that many Talmidei Chachamim will know lots more than I do who succeed to learn the Gemara. However, for some of us, it's important to be able to do it, let's say, systematically, word by word. And it's also, there's certain people who can't do it otherwise. Some people can just go through it. Some of us are maybe language-oriented more than idea-oriented, and it's very important that we know every word, otherwise we feel uncomfortable. I'm one of those. So that's why I ended up writing the dictionary, and also that's why I think some grammar is important as well. As far as the Aramaic language, I want to make one point quickly, which is not always realized. If I ask anybody, the Aramaic language is the language of whom? So what's the obvious answer? It's the language of the Arameans. What does that have to do with us? Because Aramaic is really like Yiddish in the following sense. Aramaic is a case of a foreign language which Jews write in what we call today Hebrew letters. What's Yiddish? Yiddish is basically German plus an admixture of all sorts of languages written in Hebrew letters. If there are any, I'm sure there must be some Edot Mizrach representatives here. Ladino is also, it's basically Spanish, written in Hebrew letters. If there are any Persians here, Persian Jews, Iranian Jews, there's a Judeo-Persian. There are many languages, Judeo-languages that are written in Hebrew, but they're really foreign languages. So Aramaic is not a Jewish language by definition. It's used by many people, and many people today still use Aramaic. There's several Christian churches that daven, they pray in Aramaic. And there's a village in northern Syria called Malula, where they speak Aramaic, even though the Syrians are not happy with that. They rather have them speak Arabic. Culturally, there's a bit of a struggle there. But Aramaic is really a foreign language that Jews have adopted. And historically, the process I don't have time to describe, but you probably know that there are things in Tanakh written in Aramaic. 2 words in Parshat Vayetze, a whole pasuk in Yirmiyahu, and several chapters of Sifrei Ezra and Daniel. I thought that it would be most useful. That's Aramaic in a nutshell. Next screen. It's a Semitic language, which of course is similar to Hebrew and Arabic. We can go into the various traits of Semitic languages, but of course the obvious one is that most Semitic languages, almost all Semitic languages, go from right to left and not from left to right. They also have prominently a 3-letter root, like Aramaic and Hebrew have, and so forth. And there are some differences that I will skip right now. I want to go into a text which has been handed out to you. No. I was supposed to have this. I thought it would be most useful to do a passage of Gemara, which some of you may or may not be familiar with, and to try to get something out of the text that will be of general use. The text is from Bracha Kazayim Amud, which is before you. The beginning of the story is in Hebrew. It deals with the rather famous story of how Rabbi Gamliel was deposed from being the head of the Senate, the head of the community, in effect. And the Hebrew passage explains that well enough that if you have a chance, you can look at it at your leisure. What the part I'm interested in is the Aramaic part, which is beginning to appear on the screen. And I want to go through word by word, but we will not merely discuss the translation of the word, but also discuss a little bit of dictum. And I hope it doesn't scare all of you. The first word is Omri. You will see as we go on that things are color-coded. You'll see that Omri is in the present tense, the next 2 words are in the future tense, and eventually the past tense will be in a different color. That's my wife's opinion. Omri is an example, present tense, technically it's a participle. I'm sorry, 15. That gives us an excuse to see what the participle with the present tense looks like. So I assume everybody knows some Hebrew. You know, kotev, kotevet, kutim, kotot, everybody knows that. Okay. In Aramaic, again, I'm only dealing today with binyan kal. There's just no time to go into the marechet binyanim, all the different binyanim, assuming that you know binyanim mar. I'm sorry, I don't know how much you know, how much you don't know, so don't be insulted if I misread that. But in Aramaic, in the binyan kal, the simple difference, obvious difference of a regular verb is the vowel here is a common, and the vowel in Hebrew is a fold. The Aramaic has a shorter vowel, which happens pretty often. So it's katev, katva, to be more precise, katev, katva, katavin, katavad. The nun is in parentheses because in the Aramaic, the Bavli, the nun is usually not there. In English, the nun is there all the time. In the Bavli, it's usually, not all the time, it's usually absent. It's usually katavin. But you see, the analogy to the Hebrew is very obvious, very simple, and it should not present a big problem. So at least with regular verbs, and we'll stick to regular verbs today. So let's get back to the text of the Gemara, which was back to Omri. Very good. So Omri is like Kotzvi. It means they say, they state. Who the they? The Talmidim in the base of Medrash. They stated the following. They reported the following. They're reporting the following conversation. They said, Ad kama nitzarei v'nezil. Nitzarei v'nezil are future tense. And we'll take a look now at the future tense. I'm trying to show you not to be scared, that the Aramaic is not so much different from Hebrew to be frightened about. And in my teaching experience of grammar, I have discovered that most people have problems with grammar because of psychological reasons. They have a hang-up against grammar. That the Israelis always used to claim that they hated it from the Bagrut. And it's psychological. It's really not so hard. So if you look at the English, Hebrew, Aramaic, echtov, tichtov is the same. Usually tichtov is called with the yud, in Hebrew it's not always called with the yud. That's not important. Tichtavin again, the nun is there and not there. So far, everything is simple. There's one big difference that I want to emphasize. The third person, masculine, singular, is usually not yichtov, as it is in Hebrew, but it's most likely lichtov and often nichtov. That's something that could be confusing when you learn Gemara. It's lichtov. The obvious mistake that many people make, including some people who know how to learn better than we do, is that lichtov is not an infinitive in Aramaic. It's the future tense, third person, masculine, singular. To that, I have to combine another factor, which is the use of the future tense in Babylonian Aramaic is a little different than you would expect. If you look at the translations into English, I wrote, let me write, let him write, and so forth and so on. You probably don't want to hear the technical term. The technical terms, when I grew up, at least, was adjussive. Well, at least somebody knows what adjussive is. Other people today, I think, call it the adjussive. They call it the third person imperative. In practice, it's also a modal. It means let's do something. It's not an ordinary future tense is like you will write, right? That's I will go, and so forth and so on. So technically speaking, we call it future, but really there's a special element of luck. So when you say lichtov, well, let's take something you have in the Gemara all the time, like leimek katana, right? Leimek katana means let us say, or let one say it is like the Tanaim. Doesn't mean he will say. It's not an infinitive meaning to say. It doesn't fit in to say to say. Right? Leimek katana means let one say that it be like the Tanaim. Okay? So the